As most of you know, we have begun our 21 days of purpose today. And I have high expectation and anticipation for what the Lord is going to do in me, more than what He's going to do through me, quite frankly. I think we need more work than the people that we're trying to work on. And the sooner we realize it, the sooner we'll flee to the cross. The sooner we'll realize how much we truly need Him. But it's okay, you got this on your own, I get it, you got this. Until you don't. So, I'm going to get into a little bit of the thoroughness of the 21 days of purpose in the last bit of being with you guys. But for right now, we are continuing our gospel series, and we are in John chapter 2. And we're just going to be in the first 12 verses of John chapter 2. It will be on your screen. Have you guys ever been cooking something or baking something, and there's a significantly important ingredient, and when you get to the place where you need the important ingredient, you reach for it and you realize you're out. You got nothing. And it's such a pivotal ingredient that without it, whatever you were doing amounts to nothing. Has anybody ever been in that position? I haven't, because I don't cook. But I'm just curious to see if anybody has in this room. But I have been in another position. Have you ever thought that you were swiping your card and you had more money than you actually have when you were like out of money? Mash and I have this curse, if you will. I know some of you religious folks like, don't say that. Calm down. Sheila, as a family of 5 kids, plus me and my wife, 7 people, money sometimes runs out. And I cringe sometimes when she goes shopping for groceries, and she's at the cash register, and there's a line. She's like, hey, we don't have money in the bank? And it's like our little thing, because it happens way too often, more than it should. So we both now have like PTSD of swiping the card to be like, God, please, just this one time, just do something amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take up a love offering so that it doesn't happen to us again. But anyways, but the thing that it brings me to is that whenever you run out of something that you need significantly in the moment, there's a sense of panic, right? You just get unsettled and begin to panic. And this is where we find ourselves in the story of Jesus. Last week we talked about Jesus showing up and stepping into his ministry by inviting people into following him, discipleship. And we talked about how it looks different for different people. And now this is like the first thing now that he's invited them. He's like teaching them, but he's also teaching them through life. And so there they are. We find them in the wedding, and this is the first recorded miracle of Jesus. And in this wedding, you talk about cooking and being out of something. Your wedding is probably one of the most stressful days in your life. I've actually performed a wedding ceremony yesterday, and it's like one thing can just completely topple the whole day. Like anything, like, oh, we're missing what? I thought you were supposed to get it. No, I thought your uncle was supposed to get it. My uncle's not even here. Oh, that's the uncle that you don't like. Okay, never mind. Wait, who's supposed to get it? Can we get it now? No, we can't. like panic. And when that happens, like in life, it is so easy for us to blame everyone except, and especially, I guess, would say, especially God, right? Because we all know if God is able to do anything, it's like the question is, well, God, you could have, so why didn't you? And especially when it comes down to our lack, or whenever we come to this place where something runs out in our life. And I know that this is very relevant to our lives because we have all experienced something running out in our lives. Like you just depleted. And the big idea that I want to talk about is this, that God often lets us come to the end of our own supply, not to embarrass us, but to create a space for his supply. So let's read these 12 verses. You can follow along with me, read with me. And on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said, "What business do you have with me, woman? My hour has not come." And then Jesus' mother slaps him across the face. Oh, no, that's what you all wanted to read. His mother, verse 5, says to the servants, "Whatever he tells you to do, do it." Oh man, that's such a beautiful verse. Whatever he tells you to do, do it. If you can just follow this one thing, that whatever Jesus tells you to do, do it. How different would your life be? How different would my life be? Whatever he tells you to do it. Whatever he tells you to do. Verse 6, now there were 6 stone water pots standing there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 2 or 3 measures each. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." So they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw out some now and take it to the head waiter." And they took it to him. And now when the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the groom and said to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the guests are drunk, then he serves the poorer wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." Verse 11, this beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And then after he went down to Capernaum, him and his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they all stayed there a few days. What a miracle. The story that comes after this is when he goes to the temple and cleanses the temple. So if people are at the wedding and they find out what Jesus did, they begin to follow him. And then they experience this temple chaos. Because when we follow Jesus, we don't know where he's really leading us. I love this verse also, where it says in verse 11, this beginning of his signs Jesus did in the Cana of Galilee and revealed his glory. So these disciples already believed in him, and yet we read, then they believed in him. Jesus is going to continually do things in our life to reaffirm who he is. One act of miracle is not enough for us. So you believe, and then God's going to give you reason to believe again and again and continue to believe. Because as all of us know, life throws things at us to where our belief wavers, right? Like some of you even this week, you didn't even know that you were a Christian. Or even those around you did not even know that you were a Christian based on how you behaved and acted. So God is not just receives us, asks us to believe in him, and then says, all right, adios, children. No, he walks with us. So the problem here, and I just have a couple of points, the problem here wasn't that it was just the wine. This was a symbol. So in John chapter 2, verse 3, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. See, wine in the Jewish weddings was more than just a drink. It was symbolized with joy, they were remembering the covenant blessing and abundance. We read in Psalms 104:15, says, wine that makes glad the heart of a man. So to run out of wine wasn't just a catering problem. It was a cultural shame. It wasn't like you can just go to the store real quick and say, hey, hurry up, we need something real fast. When you run out of wine, it means that there is not a way to get more. And our weddings are like as short as our services, right? 1.5 hours, 2 hours, including ceremony, eating, fellowshipping, and then everybody goes, watches their football game or goes out and does things. Like, how many times at a wedding, you have people, and they even say this, like, yeah, I have to be out of here in like 40 minutes because I have a game or I have to do something, I have to watch something or see something. And it's like we have so like taken this beautiful celebration of people, getting married and have dwindled it to the pace of our life. In Ukraine, whenever we went to a wedding, the wedding was probably longer than a service. Of course it was, because they would actually have full 2-hour service before the bride would ever walk down the aisle. And in those villages, they would invite everybody, Christians, non-Christians, and so they would use that time to evangelize to the non-Christians. So you'd have people giving their lives to Jesus, but they came for a wedding. And then they would eat out, and they would eat, not eat out, like they would go and eat, and they would eat until the food ran out. So what I remember, I don't know if it's still the case now, but you can be in a wedding feast for 2-3 days. In Jewish culture, they would celebrate for even as long as a week. So when it was a wedding day, you planned you're like, okay, a week, I need a week off. I think maybe more people would be getting married if we took a week off. You'd be like, all your kids, look, I need a week off. Who's getting married? And build relationships with them so that you can be invited to the wedding. Plus, you show up and the food is all there and you just enjoy the meal. But there's more to it, because the groom's family could be legally liable for dishonoring the guests. There's a lot more there than just, hey, we're out, let's just stick to water. And this is why Mary isn't just saying, hey, Jesus, they're out. She's saying there's joy, their joy is going to be gone. Their honor of blessing is going to collapse. The future is going to be marked by this lack. For the rest of their life, you'll be like, oh, you're the couple that ran out of wine. Gotcha. So there was a lot of writing on this situation. But the beautiful thing is that Jesus was there, and I would say he already knew what was happening, because he probably knew why he came to the wedding to begin with. So this is something that just is hard for me to even keep in my mind, but Jesus saw the dwindling of a resource, and he allowed it to dwindle. We think that if Jesus sees that something is being taken away, that he's going to stop it and replenish. But here, Jesus is allowing it to run dry. Reminds me of the story of the prodigal son, where there's a verse that says that the son who took his father's possessions wasted it with all of his friends, and then his friends disappeared because the money ran out. And then he ended up with swine, and there's a beautiful verse that says, then he came to himself. Or you can say, then he came to the end of himself. We too often try to sabotage the process of running out by rescuing our spouses, rescuing our kids. We call it love, but the truth is that we're enabling and we're preventing Jesus to begin to do the work because we're not allowing that thing to run out, to run its course. And so Jesus over here, we just see he's hanging out. He knows what's happening, and he's not doing anything about it. Makes me feel better because a lot of times when things run out in my life, I blame God, I blame myself. And sometimes you're like, maybe God, maybe this is your purpose. Maybe there's something to be said about you allowing something to run out in my life. I thought I needed it. And then when it runs out, maybe you realize that you actually did not need that thing at all. But you wouldn't have known that you didn't need it unless it ran out. Does that make sense? So God often lets human joy run out so we can learn that true joy only comes from him. Like he's basically saying that in this moment, you can rely on him to come through. It may not seem like a spiritual fix because as far as the guests are concerned, they don't even know that the wine is running out. Only a few people knew. Then we read in verse 6 that there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. It's a lot. 20 or 30 gallon pots. Like, think how massive this is. And there were 6 of them. Imagine being the servant that had to fill these pots with water. Hold on, you're not thinking. You don't just grab a hose or go to the sink. You have to walk down to the well. How long do you think it took? Depends on how far the well was. Depends how many servants there were. Like 30 gallons of weight. When we read it, we just like, oh, just happened. Oh, they got some water, click, click, click. And in less than 15 seconds, voila, wine. But what if they wouldn't have listened to Jesus? Jesus could have made the water appear. He could have. We assume that he should have, because if he's going to do something, why do we have to put the work in it? So I get mad at God. I'm like, God, you knew that you're going to do all of this. Why did you make me do all of that? Like, you could have just like, come on, Lord, I need a rest. I mean, I got 5 kids. But there's more that's going on too, that the jars here weren't for wine. They were for washing. That means that they had to be cleaned out. They weren't sanitary, if you will, for wine. So it's not that they just, and I don't even know if the wine even had water. They may have needed to dump it and then clean it out to put fresh water in it. But remember, there's a wedding guest, so those jars are dirty because people's feet are getting washed. Like, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on. Because when we think about it, we're like, oh, wine, see, I told you I can drink. Yeah, see the Bible, Jesus made it, so we're good. You know, like we find an excuses for our sin because you'll find every excuse that you want for your sin, you'll find it in Scripture. It'll be out of context. It won't talk about what you're making it fit, but you can fit whatever you want. We do it all the time. These jars were part of the ceremonial washing tradition, symbolizing attempts to make oneself clean before God. So in real practice, these were ceremonially for washing their feet. So there's a meaning behind it. They weren't just for wine, they were meant for ritual. Right? Because there was a lot of rituals in the Old Testament of cleansing oneself, purifying oneself. 6 jars is also an interesting number because it's an incomplete number in Scripture. 7 is a number of fullness or completion, if you will. 6 represents humanity without God's completion. So even in there's like a little bit of a jab, if you will, of just the humanity aspect of it. And then when God gets involved, he can use whatever is available. So religion, if you will, can hold the water, but it can't produce wine. So it may seem like you're doing the right thing. You're showing up to church, you're even reading your Bible, you're doing the rituals, you're doing the checkoff list that we talk about all the time. But if you really want real wine, you have to go to Jesus. Nothing else will be satisfying. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1, we read that the old system under the law of Moses was only a shadow, a dim preview of the good things to come, not the good things themselves. So all of these rituals it was shadowing, pointing to Jesus, and here Jesus is actually performing, taking the shadow of what they did, inserting himself into the picture. And he's basically saying, all your rituals, if you come to me, I'm going to make them into wine. You don't have to do this anymore. Who would have gotten that imagery? It says later the disciples believed. Part of it is like, oh, well, this guy, he can produce wine, so we're pretty set. Like, they thought humanly, but it wasn't the wine that they were impressed with. It was the glory that they saw. Like, the natural mind focuses on the wine, but I love that John says that the glory was revealed. The weightiness of Jesus was revealed through this sign. In verse 7, Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. So they filled them up to the brim. I love that they weren't doing it half-hearted. Because if you have to carry water in, you're like, hey, how many times have we done this? It's good enough. It's good enough. The Lord understands. But if he's asking you to do something, then now you're measured against what he's asked you to do, not what you think you should do. It's like when it comes down to worship, we have assigned what we think worship is instead of getting what worship is from the Lord. You know? And so, anyways, it just really is interesting where it filled them all to the brim. Jesus filled it to show that there is nothing that he can't do. Like, you can fill it all the way. Don't second guess. You know, when someone fills something into the brim, there's a illustration of confidence. Like, you're like, I'm gonna go complete, go all in. If you ever gamble, which you shouldn't, right? But when you're like, all right, what do I got? You're like, no, all in, right? The all in concept is really powerful with the Lord because he doesn't ask us to just give him a portion, an area. He says, if you really want the fullness of what I have, you have to surrender the fullness of who you are. Jesus gave himself completely to us, and too often we only give him a portion of us. And then we wonder why it doesn't work. But Jesus came to fulfill these laws. So all this ceremonial stuff we read in Matthew chapter 5, do not think that I come to abolish the laws or the prophets. I did not come to abolish them, but I came to fulfill them. He satisfies them. The miracle happened in the pouring, not just in the pots. So what's interesting is this, that when you read it, like Jesus gives them the command, and they are going to the water, right? It's empty. They go fill it. It's still water. They bring the jars back. Now you have 6 jars of water, not wine, water. And then he says, take the cup and pour it. So they take from the jar, pour it. They'll be impressed with this plastic, but as they're taking it from the jar, it's still water. And as they're taking it, it's still water. When did it actually turn from water to wine? It wasn't whenever they poured it. It wasn't whenever it was there. It wasn't even when the servants grabbed it and poured it in a cup. That transition happens in the last step of obedience. All you have is his word, and you're obedient, and yet you don't see his promise. And as they're carrying it, talk about everything, the embarrassment, everything, and you don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. And yet, whenever the water is finally tasted, it's not water at all. See, a lot of times we don't realize that when God performs miracles, it's always when we are in motion. When we are in motion in his obedience, when he's asking us to do, and we're in motion to obey, that's whenever the miracle is taking place. He's going to test us and test us and test us. He's not going to just give us everything so that we can then choose what do we want to do. He's like, follow me in your first step. Follow me in your second step. And that's the definition of faith, right? It's the risk. This was such a risky thing for them to do. Not seeing the miracle, but believing. Not seeing, but obeying. And allowing them to be used by God, even if it meant their shame. James 2:17 says, so you see, the faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. So this is, if you will, like the exercising of faith is the work, is the obedience. So, a good little lesson. All right, my last little point. You guys still good? In verse 4, then Jesus says to her, woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. When we read it in our modern language, we think that this is a very disrespectful way to speak to your mom. And if you would say this exact phrase right now, it would be. But we have to understand that this was not written in English or American. It's not written in English or American. It's all right. Okay. Yeah. Takes a second. But this word is, woman, is more translated as like mom or even ma'am. It's not a dishonoring terminology. It's actually a very honoring way. But here we see this tension because his mom wants him to do a physical miracle or something so that the shame is gone. But Jesus is doing something different because he's taking a moment and takes the human obligation and uses it for divine mission. Because it's not just about the wine. So here's a kind of conclusion, and then I want to step into, for the last part of it, and invite everyone, if you have not started this 21 Days of Purpose, and kind of like explain what it is and what we're wanting to do here. So this whole story, and you can dissect this even more, and there's a lot there that still can be unpacked. But the gist of what I wanted to kind of grab your attention and focus towards is this. Number one is that your lack, whatever it is in your life, is not the end, right? It's not the end when you're lacking. It's actually an invitation for you to ask of the Lord. You know, it's an invitation. Number two is God will often empty old containers, the things that have been sitting there, so that he can fill them with something new. He does it all the time into people's life, but you have to empty out your old containers. It's like whatever you're holding on to, God cannot put more in your hand until you release the thing that you're holding. You know, once you release it, then you actually become the vessel, because the vessel is a container. And if God is pouring something into our lives and we're an open container, then we are able to pour out. And as we pour out, God pours more. So he needs open and available containers to fill. And the third big idea is that the joy that he brings is much better than what ran out. So you think that whatever's running out, that's it. There can't be nothing better. But whenever you submit and give yourself for the things of the Lord and rely on his source, whatever he has to offer, whatever he brings to the table is going to be far greater than whatever the thing you ran out of. You know, and I think this is why we hold on to things, because we think that this can't get any better. And Jesus is like, hey, you think I can't do any better? And we all know, of course he does. But the real question is, in real life, do we let him? Or are we so familiar with what we have that we cannot trust him for better? John chapter 2, verse 10, a host always serves the best wine first. He said, then, when everyone has a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But he says, you have kept the best until now. That's such an amazing picture of Jesus, because he brings the best. When you give your life to him, he brings you the best. Whenever you continue to surrender and submit to him, he continues to bring the best and best. It may not, it's not a clean road from bad to good, or from good to better, but it is a journey and that he takes us on. You may have to experience that almost shame and guilt, that emptiness, that I don't know what to do. I have no control of the situation. Because that's the place that puts us to rely on Jesus. Because if Jesus wouldn't have come through, that's it. That's it. And how many of us know that those moments when we were running at our own strength, doing things in our own way, you know, thinking that Jesus was leading us, and then we run out and we blame him, but only then we realize when he fills it back up that it was not, the original thing that ran out wasn't even his, it was ours. But it was under the delusion that it was his, because we wanted it so bad, we attached Jesus' name to it. So if you're running out of whatever it is that you're maybe running out of, maybe it's joy, maybe it's peace, maybe it's something practical, finances, maybe all the doors have been closing and you're just like, everything's just like, it's like, you know the phrase that says, whenever it rains, it pours, right? It's never just one thing in your car that breaks down. It's junk. Just one little thing, and all of a sudden you're like, great. And the more money you put into it, the more you regret it. But maybe what you're running out is patience for in waiting, especially in waiting, where you're like, man, I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. And it's one thing if you're waiting for a month or 2 months, but if you're waiting for a year or two or a decade or 2 decades, God, when? God, when? You know, bring that to him. Bring that to Jesus. He's not unaware. He's very much aware. And if your life feels like a stone jar, it's hard, it's ordinary, full of stale water, offer that to him too, because he took an ordinary jar and made it into something extraordinary to contain the purposes of God. Same jar, different sources. Jesus doesn't just refill what you lost. He usually upgrades it beyond what you can imagine. So it's a beautiful story, full of meaning, and it continues to point back to Jesus is the answer for all of your issues, for all of your things. But it has to be a genuine walk with him. And I think that's where we fail a lot of times, is that we do just enough to get by, just enough until something is resolved. And just enough with Jesus never works. And so he's always inviting us to surrender all over again, to trust him all over again, to put him back in the place that he is the source. That no matter what's happening in life, that he's never going to leave you, that he's going to remain faithful, and what he has to offer is always going to be better than what anybody else has to offer, including yourself. And this is where the rubber meets the road, us trusting him, us taking the wine and saying, oh, you said it, and I'm obeying, and I'm taking it, and I still don't see it. Just keep walking. You can trust that his voice will never fail. He will not lead you into something to leave you dry. He's not going to ask you to do something that he's not willing to back up. If he says, here's a check, you can write the check, or if he wrote the check and your job is to cash it, then you know that his check is not going to bounce, unlike your pastors. His check is not going to bounce, but you have to cash the check. Too many of us are walking with an uncashed check, still doing things in our own way. And God's like, why don't you cash my check? Like, it's there. Like, yeah, I know. And you're walking to the bank. And you're like, I don't know, this could be, I don't know, I don't see it. And God's like, just cash the check. You don't because you don't really trust. And you don't trust because too many trust has been broken over and over. And it's really hard to trust and trust again. So, Father, I thank you for this story. I thank you for your word. I thank you that you continue to reveal truth to your people, God. I thank you that you don't leave us hanging. God, I thank you that no matter what we do, no matter how bad we mess up, no matter how stale our life may be, that you continue to invite us to bring all that we are carrying, whether it's brokenness, whether it's emptiness. God, you are the source of pure joy. You're the source of pure peace, of pure direction. God, we can get distracted in life and lose sight of what's really, really important. And God, remind us that this is real. This is not just a good thought. This is not just something for grandmas and grandpas. This is for the 15-year-old as much as it is for the 75-year-old. That with you, life is always better. Not without trials, but always better. Because you give us more than we need, more than we want, and you always surpass our expectation. And God, and I know that we have experienced that. So I just ask that we just continue to lay our lives down and invite your presence into our lives again and again and again. Let us never be fully satisfied with you, always longing for more. God, I pray right now that you convict us even in this moment that maybe our relationship with you, those who are here or those who are watching or listening, maybe it's really flaky and fake and just like not really there. God, shake us up so that we don't believe a lie pretending that we are in relationship with you and we are really just in relationship with religion. God, continue to woo us. Continue to help us see how awesome you really are. Not just the stories that we read, but in real life, in our life, Father. And let us step out of our areas of comfort zone to experience this life with you. God, bless each and every person that is in this place. And God, I thank you for the reminder that you are all that we need. Not just for today, but also for tomorrow. So God, I just release all of our anxiety here, God, all of our panic, our fear, God, our just all these things that derail us from what's really important. Help us to see you clearly. In Jesus' name, I thank you. Amen.